Picture this. You're standing on the sidewalk. A car rolls toward you in the dark. Just a sleek, flat nose, no eyes. Then the lights come on, not just flick on, they rise. Two lids lifting like a predator waking up. The car stares at you. That feeling? Designers chased it for 40 years. And then, one Tuesday in 2004, the last factory car with pop-up headlights rolled off the line. And nobody has built one since. Today we're going to talk about why they existed, what actually killed them, and why no manufacturer will ever bring them back to production. Buckle up. The year is 1936. Aerodynamics in car design is basically a new religion, and every designer on the planet is trying to make their car look like it's already moving while standing still. Enter Gordon Buick and the Cord 810. When it debuted at the New York Auto Show, people genuinely stopped and stared. The thing looked like it came from a decade that hadn't happened yet. Coffin nose hood, pontoon fenders, horizontal chrome louvers, and nestled inside those front fenders, headlights, hidden, retracted flush into the bodywork with no chrome rings, no bulging pods, just smooth metal. To turn them on, you cranked two small handles on the dashboard. The lights would slowly corkscrew outward, rotating on a worm drive mechanism. It was slow, it was manual, it was completely impractical, and everyone lost their minds over it. The Cord 810 didn't start a trend immediately. It was more like dropping a seed that would take 30 years to sprout. The company went bankrupt in 1937, but the idea, that survived. Fast forward to 1962, the Lotus Elan becomes the first production car to offer pop-up headlights with an electric motor. No hand cranks. You flip the switch, the motors whir, and the lenses rise automatically. Clean. Elegant. The British sports car crowd went absolutely feral. From that point on, the floodgates opened. Through the late 60s, 70s, and especially the 80s and 90s, retractable headlights became the universal shorthand for serious performance car. If your sports coupe didn't have pop-up lights, were you even trying? 3 different mechanical systems competed during this era. Manual systems were rare, mostly budget applications or emergency backups. You physically turned a crank or lever to raise the lenses. Reliable in the sense that there was nothing electrical to break, but absolutely no one wanted to do that in the rain at 11 p.m. Vacuum systems were widespread in American cars through the 60s and 70s. They tapped the engine's intake manifold vacuum to actuate a cylinder that pushed the headlight pod open. The core problem: vacuum pressure drops when the engine is under heavy load or switched off entirely, which means in aggressive driving, the exact situation where you might actually need your headlights, they'd be sluggish or refuse to open at all. One small leak in the line, and you're driving blind. Electric motor systems became the dominant solution from the late 70s onward. Each light got its own small DC motor and a gear reduction drive. Flip the switch, the motor turns, the gear spins, the pod rises. Simple in theory, but the motors burned out, the plastic gears stripped over time, and synchronization between the two sides drifted, leaving you with one headlight staring at the sky and the other still asleep. Anyone who's owned an old RX-7 knows this conversation intimately. This is the part where we just appreciate what they produced. The Mazda RX-7, both the FC and FD generations, made pop-up lights look like sculpture. When that rotary engine was singing and those lids were up, the car genuinely looked alive. The Corvette C4 wore its pop-ups as a statement. American muscle in a long, flat package. Those 4 pods rising felt like the car saying, "I'm awake now." The Honda NSX showed that a mid-engine supercar could also be daily drivable. And its clean nose with flush-mounted pop-ups was proof that function and beauty weren't enemies. The Ferrari Testarossa made an entire generation want to be Crockett and Tubbs. The Lamborghini Countach looked like it was drawn by a teenager who wanted to make something illegal. The Toyota AE86, the one from Initial D, turned a humble front-wheel drive hatchback into a cult object, partly because those little pop-up eyes became as iconic as the car itself. The Porsche 928 went a different direction entirely. Its headlights didn't just pop up, they rotated outward on a horizontal axis, pivoting from the fender surface like eyelids on a wide-awake predator. Different solution, same obsession with a smooth nose at rest. For roughly 3 decades, pop-up headlights were the universal sign that you were looking at something serious. 3 separate forces killed them. None of them individually would have been fatal. Together, they made pop-ups impossible. Force 1. Pedestrian safety regulations. Through the 90s, European and global safety bodies started seriously measuring what happens when a car hits a pedestrian at low speed. The answer, in most cases, was the pedestrian loses badly. Regulators began mandating that front-end structures absorb impact in specific ways. Soft zones, crumple geometry, minimum clearance between the hood and hard components underneath. Pop-up headlight pods are the opposite of soft. They're rigid metal or hard plastic housings mounted on mechanical brackets. In a pedestrian impact, they act like a battering ram. Meeting the new European pedestrian protection standards while keeping a retractable headlight mechanism became geometrically impossible. You'd have to completely redesign the concept from the ground up, and even then, you'd likely fail. Force 2. LED technology. This one is less obvious, but equally fatal. Traditional halogen and even early xenon bulbs were large. The reflector housing behind them had to be large, which meant that if you wanted to tuck the headlight away, you needed a pod big enough to hide a substantial unit, plus room for the mechanism to operate. LEDs changed everything. Modern LED headlight arrays can be extraordinarily thin and flat. Designers suddenly had the freedom to integrate lighting directly into the bodywork at almost any angle and profile. There's no longer a physical need to hide a bulky unit because the unit isn't bulky anymore. Adaptive matrix LED systems deliver more light output, better beam precision, longer service life, and lower energy draw than anything pop-ups could ever house. The technology made the hiding trick irrelevant. Force 3. Aerodynamics at speed. This one is the cruel irony. Pop-up headlights were partially justified on aerodynamic grounds. Hide them when you don't need them and reduce frontal drag. Clean nose equals better coefficient. But here's what nobody liked to advertise. When the lights are open, the aerodynamics get significantly worse. The open pod creates turbulence, generates lift, and at high speeds acts as a genuine aerodynamic anchor. The faster you go, the worse it gets. For a daily driven streetcar doing highway speeds with the lights on, which is, you know, nighttime, this is a constant, unavoidable penalty. Modern flush integrated lights create zero additional drag regardless of conditions. Add to all of this the homologation nightmare of getting retractable systems to meet activation speed requirements, beam angle standards, and height regulations simultaneously. And by the early 2000s, the math simply didn't work. The Chevrolet Corvette C5 ended production in 2004. It was the last factory automobile sold anywhere in the world with retractable headlights as a standard feature, not the last ever designed with them. McLaren and Porsche put pop-ups on concept cars well into the 2000s as nostalgia nods. But concepts don't have to pass safety certification. Production cars do. The C6 Corvette launched in 2005 with fixed headlights. No fanfare, no announcement. The era just ended. Here's the thing about pop-up headlights. They weren't killed because they stopped looking cool. They were killed because the rest of the world got serious about not hurting people. That's actually the correct outcome. Pedestrian safety standards exist because data showed real injuries were preventable. LED technology genuinely makes roads safer at night. The trade-off was real and the engineers made the right call, but the aesthetic loss is also real. Modern car design has converged toward a kind of aerodynamic anonymity where almost every front end looks related to every other front end. Pop-ups forced designers to solve a problem, and the solutions they came up with produced some of the most memorable machines ever built. They'll come back in some form eventually. New materials, new mechanisms, new interpretations. The idea is too good to stay dead forever. But the original era, that 40-year window between the Cord 810 and the last Corvette C5, that specific thing is finished, and it deserves to be remembered.